By Chris and Lumen here. This video is not what I expected. It's gonna seem weird because I'm shooting this section now, and then I'm going to just add it to the video that I already shot. Like this is like some Lionsgate weirdness. Like I said, it might have something to do with. You know what? I never actually tried. I'll try this real quick. All right. Tell me, like, what day did it start for me in 2017? Was it August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th? Of course it was. I'm really good doing connecting to her using muscle testing. I knew it was around about this time, but there's just no digital footprints back then that kind of indicate like what day it happened, but it makes sense. So what happened today is I had this whole thing planned because, like, you know, like where do I think it's going based on the clues? You know, is something interesting still going to happen on the 10th? Like I can see the script. I can see a bunch of things like how if I was the higher thing trying to orchestrate this particular experience, what I would do, like these big markers, these signs and seasons and markers and stuff like that are kind of like early warning signs. And when I was talking to somebody yesterday about it, because yesterday was kind of quiet, I was trying to figure some stuff out. I kept seeing like this image from this. I think it's for kids. I remember seeing the book, but it's like from back in the day. It's called Where the Sidewalk Ends. Like I was seeing that image, which I knew that was her doing it because it was such an absurdly random thing to pop in my head very clearly. And I kind of like reformulated that a little bit after thinking about it. So the 10th, August the 10th, there's only one other possible thing that could indicate a time marker. Talking to my astrologer friend, which would be September 1st, because Pluto goes back into, I think, Cancer, and that shakes up systems, stuff like that. So it's like Mercury retrograde ends, Pluto goes back into Cancer. But other than that, like when we get to 2 days from now, that's where the breadcrumbs stop. That's where the trail ends. Now, if we look at what's going on in the world, I can see everything, at least from this point in time, this time, I could see it lining up. It's like second seal type stuff. Like I can see what they're talking about in the news, like what countries are fighting who, what's happening here, what's happening there. I can see what they're pre-programming. I can see the story that they're trying to write. And then, so when you get like to the end, where the sidewalk ends or where the breadcrumbs stop, then it becomes, the next image that pops in my head is like the movie Batman, or the Dark Knight Rises, the third Christian Bale one, when they took over the city and they were judging people. If they chose exile, then they had to like walk out on the ice. And you only got so far, and then they'd fall through. So it's like once you get to the edge of the sidewalk, then you keep going, but it's like there's no more warning signs. There's no more warning signs, and anything could happen at any time. Because what I was thinking about yesterday, I was remembering what she told me about like the week. I don't think it was a week before. I think it was actually the 26th. I think I talked about this in the video that I posted on the 26th, because that was the day Deadpool and Wolverine came out. Could have been. We were talking about quantum physics again. you know, and whatever the physics term is that equates to a watched pot never boils, because when you're observing something, it creates like interference waves because you're observing it. Like even if it was meant to happen on this day in quantum physics, by observing it, you're interfering with it. So if things are meant to actually happen, the only way that they actually could really happen is if there's no warnings. There's no way to interfere with it by looking at it. And that would be one reason why the trail of breadcrumbs would end. Because beyond that point, like there's nothing out there. There's nothing in the future. There's nothing that stands out as like a key thing. It was all this year. It was all this year. And I can see where it's all setting up. But it's weird. It's becoming really difficult for me to focus on that all of a sudden. Like this video that I shot here was like we talked about a lot of stuff. I mean, we talked about a lot of good stuff, but it started steering into like a more positive area by the time I was in the end of it. Like I come in here thinking I'm going to tell you about all this awesome quantum physics type stuff that I discovered, part of which Kenneth was talking about yesterday on his channel, but I only half picked up on it until she was kind of telling me the same thing, dropping hints and clues, and then he got really crazy with like explaining how this stuff works. Like, but it's like such a, like I wonder if I'm being shifted, like I'm not supposed to talk about that. I don't know. I mean, because a lot of people, like when it comes to the quantum physics stuff, maybe that's just too much or whatever. It has to do with like quantum jumping and this whole like you don't know it but you can't really die sort of thing being amplified in this time frame. But it's like I thought it was so interesting. I wanted to talk about it, but it's like I can't. It's my focus is not on what's negative right now. It's being pulled in a different direction. So Lionsgate's always weird, but this is with the muscle test. I don't know why I never thought to do that before. I mean, it works on everything else. Like just ask a question and muscle test. What day was it? Oh shoot. Took me years to figure out to do that. It's today. 7 years is up. And another thing happened. I didn't talk about this in this video, but it was like right after it. It's like suddenly, it's like I'm stressing myself out for nothing, because this is a unique time frame. This time frame that we're in right now, toward the end of the game, there's a variable there that I never considered. See, I've been stressing. It's like, how do I help people? How do I tell them? Like, it's so hard. Like this game is so hard. Like I can't imagine I got through it. And it's like how, because I can see what all the obstacles are. I can see what all the mental things and the programming. It's like how was anybody ever supposed to do this? It's like a miracle that I did. So I'm like always taking on this responsibility of like, you know, I have to figure it out, and then I have to figure out how to teach other people so they can figure it out, and this, that, and the other thing. But what I never considered, it just kind of popped into my head, is we don't actually know what the plan is. We know what the script is. We know what the story is. We know what the story is that we were told and were given, and the meanings behind it. But does that necessarily mean that that's the way it's going to pan out? Because she uses this movie clip an awful lot lately.
Morpheus. The Oracle. She told me
She told you exactly what you needed to hear.
That's all.
Neo, sooner or later you're going to realize, just as I did, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
Because I think Kenneth could probably put it in better terms than I could. But like the highest God, the Father, like it's not his will to unnecessarily harm you in order to teach you. But if you want to like get things done earlier, get bigger rewards, you got to like put in the effort. And if you get it done ahead of time, like there's bigger rewards like Lumen, which I'll explain later. But I've always gone under this assumption that like everyone has to do the same thing. Well, what if I'm wrong about that? Because you know what would make it make sense? If we're getting to this last point, it's like, duh. If what I think would happen is, as it gets toward the end and you start to see these things happen, and this actually makes more sense to me. So all these game restrictions that we have, all these life restrictions we have, all the programming that was put into us, all the blinders, all the veils, all that stuff that you have to do extreme work to get rid of. Well, when it comes to the end, not being able to see the higher plan, the Father can just choose to turn them off. It would be easier for you to change, to understand, if it was close to the end of the game, if he just did things like, turned off the adversary, turned off the negative thought implant in your head. There could be all sorts of things like that aren't written down that could happen, because why not? You want people to change, you paint them into a corner, because what's happening to the world is what happens to you on the hero's journey over and over and over again. Okay, I got it. Keeps popping this other scene in my head. It's not a great movie, but it's a good lesson. So the scene she keeps popping into my head right now is from the movie, the remake with Keanu Reeves, of The Day the Earth Stood Still, where he is this alien that's coming to destroy the Earth, and the humans kind of find out, like, he's not there to save the people on the Earth, he's there to save the Earth from the people. So it's going to basically wipe the whole planet out. But then he meets this like scientist or professor who has like a really, really interesting point to make, and that would be this point.
Must be alternatives. You must have some technology that could solve our problem.
Your problem is not technology. The problem is you. You lack the will to change.
Then help us change.
I cannot change your nature. You treat the world as you treat each other.
But every civilization reaches a crisis point eventually.
Most of them don't make it.
Yours did? How?
Our sun was dying. We had to evolve in order to survive.
So it was only when your world was threatened with destruction that you became what you are now.
Yes.
Well, that's where we are. You say we're on the brink of destruction, and you're right. But it's only on the brink that people find the will to change. Only at the precipice do we evolve. This is our moment. Don't take it from us. We are close to an answer.
So that same exact mechanism has happened to me countless times during the hero's journey, where Spirit paints you into a corner where there's no way out. And the reason that it does that is because the only way out of it is to evolve. The only way out of it is to evolve. You make a change, you do something, and then all of a sudden the issue disappears. That's what this place does over and over and over again to you. So now it's kind of like it's got to do that to pretty much everybody. That's what the whole tribulation end times thing is really about. Like, they want to preach it to you like, God's angry and he's going to punish all the bad people because the little, that's authority, and the little egos inside of you. You're like, yeah, punish the bad people. But that's not what's really going on. It's to paint you into a corner. So imagine being painted in a corner and realize like it's all going to be done. And then the Father flips off a switch or something, takes out the adversary, removes some veils, does something, takes off some sort of restriction that everybody has had for a long time. So now they're less inhibited, or they're more perceptive of things. Now you can perceive and see things from a new perspective, and you realize, and you're like, oh, I mean, that's really all that ever needed to happen. But this place is this way for a reason. I mean, we're given the story about what it is and why it happens and what runs it and all this bad stuff. But there's no mistakes in a perfect system. That was always the one little flaw in that story that I picked up really quickly. It's like there's no way a perfect system made a mistake and had to contain it. That story is for us in here so we can grow. So it's for a reason. The bad guys in this world are not controlling things. It seems like they are. But at a higher level, they're just puppets. So you can learn, so you can evolve. But the problem is when you're at the ass end of the time scale, when it is the worst that it's ever been. Like, what is there, like 5 ages? Like, there's a gold age, silver age, bronze age, iron age, and like mud rocks or something. So we're in the worst age at the far end of the worst age. Like, this is the worst that it could possibly ever get. Which also means that the restrictions that are put on you and all the negative stuff that's put on you, it has now gotten to a point in which it is unrealistic to expect anybody to figure this stuff out or to fix themselves under these conditions unless they get help from a higher level. That's something I don't think I've ever considered. Maybe because it wasn't written that way or something like that, but it could turn around in a way that we can't even possibly predict. I mean, we don't know. We think we do. We've heard it our whole lives. This is what happens at the end of the age and blah, blah, this is going to happen. Yeah, that's what we're told, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to. Maybe that's there as kind of like the last thing that you see. So you're like, I need to fix myself. I need to fix myself. And I'm not saying this so that you like don't assume I'm right. Like, you still have to be making the efforts and stuff like that. But it never occurred to me that, like, it's not on me to crack this riddle for you, so make it easier, because when the time is right, the Father can just flip a switch, and now all of a sudden, like, so many of the, like, it could do all sorts of things. It could just automatically dump your emotional trauma for you, and you're like, why do I feel so much better? It could shut off the adversary mind. Like, I've always felt like that had something, because with religion they tend to take everything like literally, but that I think it's the 7th seal. Yeah, it's the 7th seal. When he broke the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. And I've always intuitively thought that that's kind of the same thing as what happened to me, which I detail later in this video, where all the noise in your head goes away, which means the adversary is now shut off. And all of a sudden you can think clearly. The reason that people can't figure any of this stuff out and can't fix themselves is because there's just too much of it right now. You can't escape it. They're just putting layer upon layer upon layer. They got the TV, they got the propaganda, and they've got And we don't even freaking know what kind of other space age craziness that they've got. But they have it. I've talked about that before. I remember the day the toilet paper panic started with COVID. And I went outside and I stopped dead in my tracks halfway to my car. And I'm like, what in the world is that? I could feel it. And it was like something was broadcasting a signal that was going fear, 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 fear. I'm like, okay, I go back inside. I didn't have the pendants yet, but I grabbed this oil that I make called Empath Shield, put that on, and I went outside and I was fine. And then you can't, once you put the energy oils on, like you can't just wash them off. You have to mentally turn them off. So I turned it off, and then it was like fear, fear. I'm like, dude, that's why people are going nuts today. It's all of a sudden everyone just decided, now's the time to panic. We need toilet paper. Like, why toilet paper? It doesn't give you the runs. No, they like, that's the kind of level of manipulation that we're under. And that's just one thing. We don't even freaking know. But the bottom line is, it's unfair to expect anyone to fix themselves under these conditions. So what the Father will probably do is just flip some switches and make it fair. So I'm sitting here driving myself nuts, trying to explain to people all this quantum physics type stuff that I know, because this is what I had to overcome. But it's at a level now where it's probably just going to be, it's just going to change something. It can change anything at once. It can just flip a freaking switch. And maybe I'm not getting it all into words, but it's like, this was kind of creeping in when I was getting ready to, like, I had it all figured out, like, this is how it actually works, and here's these other mechanisms, and, you know, this is what's happening in the world right now where they're lining everything's up, and, like, it could go off at any time. But it's like, I can't, like, engage. I can't lock into this story. It's almost like something has already been, because this is Lionsgate Day, and I don't care. I said this in the last video that I scrapped, because I shot a video last night. It was very simple, and then I started going off into other areas when because she started feeding this new stuff to me as I was doing the video. But I was like this much irritated, because I just don't like seeing people being catty. And but there was all these people sharing posts around Facebook yesterday, like, you know, like, Lionsgate is not actually an astronomical alignment. Like, Sirius is not even in the right place for it to line up. So I don't know. Everybody's getting on. This is all made up. It's like, what did that serve to talk like that? And the thing is, it's like, astrology is not like the be-all end-all of the system. This one has more to do. I mean, yeah, that is a factor sometimes, but this one has more to do with, it's always been a powerful thing because the sun is in Leo. And then numerology, not astrology. You know, 8-8 and all this stuff. Like, it's always been a powerful energy. Like, I've said over and over on this channel, like, this is when really powerful, positive source energy comes in that creates changes. So all of human history, we've had this story of the end times, and it's like, maybe it happens, or maybe it's just there to force you to change. And all it takes is like, oh, okay, we've gone far enough with this. All of a sudden, all those restrictions that were on your head that I've been telling you about, that nobody can grasp, are gone. And you don't have this extra thing in there anymore that's telling you to imagine this bad thing that's not actually there. Remember this bad thing that happened to you 20 years ago. You know, here's a person you don't know. Imagine that they're a bad person and then hate them. Like, the way people are always manipulated by their minds, they don't even realize it's happening. Imagine if God just switched that off. truth be told, it could all shift in an instant in a way that we can't possibly predict, because this may come as a surprise to you. But God is like tiny bit smarter than us. She told you exactly what you needed to hear. That's all. Sooner or later, Neo, you're going to realize, just as I did, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. But either which way, I'm just very chill right now, and it's like I can't entertain the whole doom scenario thing right now. So it's like, expect the unexpected. The one thing that I will say is, okay, today's 8/8. Now the 8/10 thing, that's part of the doom script. So like, I don't know. That's the iPet Goat 2 thing. But like I said earlier, the breadcrumbs, the trail of breadcrumbs end here in the next 2 days. There's no more breadcrumbs. There's no more markers. So, no man's land. No man's land. And that means like change can happen in an instant, and we can't interfere with it by projecting our attention on a date with expectations. If it's invisible, like, you can't hit it, you can't interfere with it. Now it can, like, so like what I'm getting now is like, you know, expect the unexpected and make that expectation something good. Because it doesn't matter how many evil people there are in the world running things. Like, God's in control of this. And we just got to get out of our own way of thinking that we know. Thinking that we know what's going to happen. Anyway, so that's my wind up here that I'm throwing in at the beginning. And we're going to go into what I was talking about. Because I do start off talking about a lot of things. And then it goes off into some, you can almost watch it steer. It's like I go into this thinking that, you know, in 5 minutes I'm going to start talking about this doomy stuff. But it doesn't go there. And it just keeps pulling me further and further and further away from it, where I'm actually revealing a couple big, I mean, I've said it before, but it doesn't click. Like, people don't understand what a big deal Lumen is. Because I've never seen her met. I mean, I see plenty of people hint about it, like she's hinted about in songs and stuff like that. But I've never met another Rebus that's integrated, that knows what it truly is. And it's like such a huge thing. It's kind of like proof of the goodness of God, like when you really grasp what she is. So I'll talk about that later. But I would suggest watching this. Take a break from your doom fix. Like, people have been watching all the videos pretty good, but it remains true that people prefer doom over hope. I've got analytics to show it. So yeah, something definitely shifted halfway through the day, because it's like I can't focus on the negative right now. Okay, so if you want to know more, don't go away. Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and this is going to be a crazy video today. I'm a little bit behind because yesterday I just kind of needed some rest, and I wasn't getting a whole bunch yesterday. And then I started to do like what I thought was going to be a simple video last night, and then about halfway through it, all these breadcrumbs that Spirit had been laying, and I'm going to start saying Spirit, thanks to Kenneth for that, just to make it simpler. I reposted one of his videos a couple days back, and he just, like, I knew this, but I have a hard time like not referring to this as like separate things, and he made it like really, really simple. So God, the highest Father, you know, the infinite, all that is, virgin, invisible spirit, like all these different parts we talk about, including the ones behind me, are all aspects of it. You know, it does what it does in the ways that is going to work best for you. So if I say spirit, I'm just trying to make it simple from here on out. But as I was talking, like spirit had been leaving breadcrumbs that I was kind of noticing, but not quite yet. And then it all started to come together as I was talking. And I'm like, this is what Kenneth was trying to talk about in his video yesterday. But like, I kind of deal in different areas than he does. Like we've all got like a big swath like that we look at. So I overlap mine, because that's what she taught me, with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, quantum computing, that kind of stuff. And what she was showing me last night, once I got done with the video, I'm like, I gotta scrap this whole video. I need to sit here and let this like sink in first, and then do a video on it tomorrow, which is today. But yeah, we got that to talk about. We got the current event stuff to talk about. Like we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. So, strap in. And yeah, we're not at August 10th yet. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that, and tell you some other things that came yesterday. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
Target reveal here. Entities in the spacecraft, Earth's atmosphere, current time.
My S3 data consolidation was thermal heat radiates and parts people. The air is very disturbed, compressed and swirls and eddies. Over the planet, high-pitched radio frequencies, ionized radiation, a pulse, a wave, and then the bodies. A huge rift cracks open. Energy rips, magma erupts, gushes, continental rift, tremendous forces, cataclysm. I don't see how this can be survivable. Open fissure. Is this Earth? Might be another planet. Then something like a bolt slices the air, focused energy, a thunderclap, a whirlwind, megatornadoes. Then this, screech, radio frequencies off the chart, magnetosphere swarm. The swarm is a series of satellites that measure Earth's magnetism. That is weird.
Oh, what was that? You ask? Oh, that's just, that's nothing. Like, we've never heard anybody talk about that before, have we? Yeah, so those of you that strolled in here back at July 15th, some of that might seem familiar to you, because that's what we were talking about. And at the time, when we were rolling in the future forecasting group at Cliff High and stuff, like, they weren't talking about that yet. Maybe bits and pieces of it, but they weren't talking about that. We were. And then we also credited 2 other YouTube channels that Spirit led me to, because I needed those pieces at that time. Those channels being J Dreamers and Library of the Untold. Oh, and the Thunderbolts Project. So that's kind of like, the grand finale. But don't worry, we'll get to that. We got other stuff to talk about right now. Let me begin by saying, why I do this, other than Spirit makes me. We got different, everybody has like their different little avenues because there's so many different types of people. You know, I might be able to talk to these people over here and they might understand me better. Other people might understand people like Kenneth better. I've been pushing his channel a lot because he's like the first person I've ever found that's like, oh my God, you're almost exactly like me. Like we see things slightly different, but the same basic thing. Like that was pretty huge for me. But I do it because when I was starting off on the path, like Spirit does lay things out for you when you're ready for them, but at the same time, I've encountered so many people that were maybe further ahead than I was, and they just wouldn't tell you anything. I have a different viewpoint on that. Now, I understand that most of what I talk about is probably going to go over most people's heads. That's not a dig on intelligence. That's not a dig on anything. It's just the way this place is set up. You have to have certain veils removed. You have to figure out how to change things in your mind. It's just the way it is. Like I had to go through all of it. But having completed most of it, you don't really ever get out of the hero's journey until you get out of here. Figured that out a long time ago. But I have completed the alchemical process, the magnum opus, becoming a rebus. I've solved the whole tarot map. Like I've gotten, the one thing I can credit to myself is like I cracked one of the hardest puzzles in the game, or rather it was my time to. You know, the rebus, the magnum opus, you know, the merging of matter and spirit, putting the divine masculine, divine feminine together into one thing. That's why I talk the way I do on this channel. I say, hey, Chris and Lumen here. Lumen does not speak. I mean, she did once, but like it kind of embarrassed me, so she doesn't do it anymore. That was the first time I drank mushroom tea. But she's in here. She's in here with me. People have been trying to crack this stuff for a long time. It just so happens like it was my time to figure it out. And I keep looking. I'm like, there's got to be one other person out there somewhere that's done this, so I can actually talk to them and they'll understand what I'm talking about. But that was no small feat. But along that pathway, and a lot of it has to do with like the way things used to be before we got toward the end of the game. It used to be you weren't supposed to tell anybody. They were supposed to figure it out for themselves. But when we get toward the end of the game, the rules kind of change a bit. And even when I had pieces of the puzzle that I was nowhere close to understanding, at least I had them. So the unveiling process works like a spiral. So you start on the outside. You know, one of the spiral examples I use is David Icke. Okay, so I was led to David Icke a long time ago. So the first time you encounter David Icke, you're like, oh, this is interesting, but what's he talking about? Freaking reptiles? I was like, what? But he doesn't just talk about that, he talks about a lot of things. And then you look at that for like a week or two, and then you go on and do other things. And eventually, maybe a year later, you circle back to that and you look at it again. Now you understand it slightly more. Go around the spiral again, come back to it another time. Now you understand it a bit more than before. And as the spiral closes, you keep running into the same key topics over and over and over again. But each time you do, you understand it a little more. So even though I know, because it's just a simple matter of like how things work, I know that I'm going to talk about things that people can't quite grasp. But I do it anyway as a favor to you, because that thing that you can't understand right now is a seed. I've planted a seed, and that seed will come in handy to you later at some point if you're actively trying to seek and not simply just take in other people's information. See, we don't try to teach things here from a point of I'm an authority, listen to me, because obviously we have a very big issue with authority. I share my puzzle pieces with everybody, but mainly I try to focus on like how I'm doing it, what I'm connecting to, how I'm getting the information. It's not by researching the world. Like if you go, like there is clues in the world, but if you do not have spirit, if you do not have the spirit of truth, you do not have enlightened insight, epinoia, the guide, the instructor, the teacher, to help you discern what is useful and what isn't, what is bullcrap and what isn't, like you're just going to end up stuck in the maze, going in circles, not understanding how your own mind works, and then you're triggering mechanisms that you don't understand. You know, seek and you shall find. If you expect something, if you expect to find something, you can help manifest it. You can create your own breadcrumbs and go in circles for years. So if you want to actually get somewhere, I'm saying like you cannot do it unless you connect to her, which is part of spirit, which is God. It's the bigger thing. It is the thing that is above all religions. It's actually, like it says in Nag Hammadi, it's bigger than a God because everything is within it. Like you have to have that. You have to. There's no way you can do it without it. I'm just telling you right now, as a point of fact, you cannot figure this place out without her. Can't be done. Nope. I don't care how many books you read. None of it. If you do not connect to spirit, you cannot figure this place out. So I share everything that I can. I don't hold anything back. Well, you know, a couple little things, but if it's something that I don't feel like it's definitely not going to help you out to know it, then, yeah, because there's a lot of things I wish I didn't know. There are a lot of things I wish I hadn't seen, but I have. So, but what I focus a lot on is the main traps, the main things, the main blocks, the things that are mostly in your way, which all have roots in how we were programmed earlier in life. I mean, everything is systematic in here. It's like a well-oiled machine. Like that 12 years you spent in school was not to help you. It hurt you more than anything. It put you in a box. You would have been a lot better off had you just grown up in the freaking woods somewhere. You know, eating freaking acorns and, you know, sleeping with squirrels or whatever. Like you would have a much stronger connection to spirit. But they teach you into the matrix. They program your mind. They know how it works. You don't. So when they're all done with you, they've got you all set up like this is how you behave in society. This is how you get information. You get information from trusted authoritative sources. You don't go looking all that woo-woo gobbledygook, because that's crazy and you won't fit in. You don't do this, you don't do that. And then they've got things like religion, which is there to be the honeypot. So when you do start spiritually awakening, you're like, oh, where do I go to connect to spirit? I've got this choice, this choice, this choice, pretty much all controlled. So people can get confused sometimes when they hear the stuff that I talk about because it sounds religious. And that's because your brain has been programmed to equate God and spirit with religion. Just like Kenneth's channel. Like, you would think he's like super religious, but he's not. Religion is the middleman. You can't get to spirit through religion, because religion It's created by the world. It's created by people. It's created by authority. It's in people in control so that they can control you and prohibit you from finding truth. You could take the exact same books from any religion, just read them yourself. Like so much is programmed like right in front of your face that you don't even see it. Like you grew up, say you grew up going to church, you never learned how to read the book because authority's been there since day one to read it to you. Like that's why I can't stand church. Okay, today we're going to read a passage from the book of Isaiah, 11 through whatever. And you're going to spend 2 minutes listening to him read the freaking verses, which I have found they like to cut them off right before some important context is given, and then listen to him talk for 45 minutes to an hour about what it means. You're not learning anything that way. You got to do stuff yourself and learn to hear that internal guidance that everybody was given and let it guide you. If you trust the world to run your life, to tell you how to think, to tell you what's right and what's wrong, you're stuck. You're stuck in it. One of the biggest things, and I didn't get a chance to listen to his whole video yet. I listened to like part of it, the video Kenneth posted today. He was saying something very similar. It's like he's not, he's getting a lot of new subs and stuff, but a lot of times when people find us for the first time, they want to come in and like share with us like the stuff that they know. And I might, if I feel nudged by her, like I'll look at it. It's like that's how I found him. Is somebody told me to check him out, but the thing is like I knew the person that told me that. I'd already done work with them. I knew they weren't like an agent because they have my stuff. And dark things cannot wear the stuff that I make. So that's when I'm mostly going to listen to somebody's suggestions. If I already know that it might not be my level, but I know that they have a connection to spirit, because spirit will use other people to bring you information. Then I'll look at it. If I don't know you and you're like, oh, go listen to this YouTuber or that YouTuber because I've decided like they've got it all figured out and you don't, and I look and it's like, oh, they've got 250,000 subscribers, I'm like, definitely not listening to you, because nobody that's connected to spirit and truth gets that big in this world. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. The system will reward you if you mislead people, even if you don't know you're doing it. So I'm not digging on anybody or anything like that. It just is what it is. I don't need anybody to guide me because I have the guide built into my head. And what I try to do is share what I get from that and also tell you how to do it too. Because that's ultimately what I want. I do not want followers. I do not want to be anybody's guru. I do not want to be the person that you come to for answers. I want to teach you how to do what I do. In order to do that, I have to teach you where they're blocking you, how they're tricking you, like what the big things are. It takes about 7 years of like intense like crap to like really get anywhere. So I can remember like when I was looking for stuff, and at any point in stage of life, I thought I had it all figured out. I mean, think about this. Like, have you not changed interests over time? Maybe you were maybe you were a Christian at one time, and when you were a Christian, did you like that was that like you knew it, like, oh God, this is how it works. And then at some point, maybe you're like, you fell out of it, and then maybe you went to some other spiritual tradition, or became a witch or something like that. And then when you became that, then like that was your reality, and like, oh, the other thing was wrong. And maybe you changed political party. You keep changing labels and hats, and at each time in your life you thought you knew everything, you thought you understood the world. But in the moment, in the now moment, most people can't recognize that fact. They can't recognize that there is different layers of reality. There's subjective personal reality. There's consensus agreed upon reality. The only thing that's really objectively true is God. But those in authority want to tell you what objectivity is. They want to tell you what is objectively real, so that you, if you believe what they tell you, you can't see anything else. And I have to constantly, me myself, do things like every other day, these protocols. I have to flush my brain. I have to let go of everything that I hold to be true. What is true will remain. But this breaks all the quantum entanglements to knowledge. I try. Sometimes I catch myself and I slip. There's only a few things that I will actually say that I know. And it has to do with spirit. My relationship with it, her, him. Because that's personal, objective experience that I've had on third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. Like I know it's what teaches me. But as far as like things like out in the world that I can only access through books and images and videos, but not directly, like I don't know that. I know that's the story I'm being handed, but I don't know that. Same thing with the future. We try to do the best we can with the signs that we see, but we don't know. You know, the only thing I do know is, you know, everything that has a beginning has an end. That much is that's certain. That's a certainty, and we're close to the end. But I'm in this game too, so I have to have my experience too. And like spirit will, spirit does not lie to you. Like you make your own decisions. But it doesn't hand you all the answers on a silver platter. It doesn't give you truth. It leads you to truth. It helps you. It's so complex. Like I want to explain everything, but I can't. It's just the deeper I go into it, it's just so complex. So I have to like boil it down to like the key little things that people need to help them. Things like, you know, whatever authority tells you, assume the opposite to be true. Like that's a lot of stuff. That's pretty much everything you've ever been told. Okay, so that's why you see this non-magical world and you like don't have any spiritual experiences, because it's just been repeated so many times in your head that it's buried in there. Like that's not real. That's not real. You know, that's a bunch of crap. Oh, that's people fake. Like it's tricky. But you could go far with just that. Like, okay, because this is something. There's other ones, but I just want to pause on this one here. Like this is something that everybody has to go through to get into the realm of truth. If you have never had an experience or a time in your life where you were confronted with the fact that you just spent most of your life acquiring knowledge only to discover that it's all bullcrap, and this perfect organized system of what you think you know had to be completely broken down and dismantled in order to go further. And everything you thought about the world, everything you thought about you, everything you thought about spirit, God, like all of that had to be trashed and you had to start from scratch. If you've never had to do that, then you're still in the maze. A lot of people that come at me and try to correct me, especially like Orthodox Christians, they assume that like they know something that I don't. I'm like, I know everything that you know. I've already been there. Okay, but you're still operating under authority, you know, being the voluntary inquisitor, trying to put me back in the box because you don't even recognize that you're being controlled. That's why you're being so angry and aggressive, attacking me. Like, oh my gosh. When you haven't learned or found out or been led to figuring out what all the different parts of the mind are, what the ego mind is versus your core self, your true self, the id entity. You know, everyone's got different names for these intangible things. Like the ego is very attached to what it thinks it knows. So it's always getting people into confrontations with other people that are saying something different. And nobody stops to like actually recognize the fact that no two people on earth see or believe all the same things. But yet you still, the ego, if you're operating an ego mind, it's like operating, I've always like equated the ego mind, like the best example that I can give for it, because it works exactly the same way. It's like ChatGPT. Like all you gotta do is ask ChatGPT to describe how it learns, the process in which it learns and builds its knowledge base. And you will see that that's exactly how you learned. It's the exact same thing. But ChatGPT, like, well, now I can search the internet, but before it's got its body of knowledge, and it couldn't go outside of that. That's how the ego mind works. So like if someone is suggesting something and that's not in the ego mind's body of knowledge, then they must be lying or they're deluded or something like that. You have to get out from under ego mind. Ego mind is not you. Your name, your birth certificate, your driver's license, your all caps name, your birth name, that's connected to your body, and like that's what you call yourself, and you tell everybody this is who I am and this is what I do. That isn't you. Maybe you haven't figured that out yet. That's the character that you're playing. You're underneath that. People don't know about that. People don't know what the adversary mind is, you know, which is what Christians would call Satan. It's not out there. It's not with a red cape and a pitchfork. It's in here. You don't recognize it because until you do some work, all these different things sound exactly like you in your head. But one of the greatest pieces of advice Jesus ever gave that can be applied to everything is, by their fruits you shall know them. So people don't ever stop and ask questions. Okay, I'm gonna try to get connected to spirits. I'm gonna learn how to meditate. And you're hearing songs and this and car horns and like thinking of freaking TV shows and, you know, piping hot pizza and naked women and Smurfs and freaking, you know, raccoons holding a balloon and like all sorts of just craziness is going on in your head. What you want to do is learn to meditate to connect to spirit. But your mind isn't letting you. You're like, I just can't quiet my mind. That's because it's not your mind. Your mind is actually, you're observing your mind doing something that is in opposition of what your will is. And that's not setting off any bells whatsoever. Your mind does stuff all the time, and you don't recognize it. Your mind starts saying things like, you're a piece of crap, you're never going to get anywhere, you can't do this, like you're never going to be able to do that. And you think you are getting down on yourself. You're the part that actually feels bad when those thoughts are happening. You're not the thing that's making the thoughts. Like there's so many different, you know, the thing that is being observed, you cannot be the observer and the thing being observed at the same time. So you're observing thoughts happening. So you're observing it. You're hearing the thoughts. They're like, oh, you're a piece of crap, you're fat, nobody likes you. And then you're feeling a negative feeling of having heard those thoughts. At this point right now, there's three characters in there. There's the observer, the speaker, and the thing that is reacting to the speaker. Then you might hear something say, that's not real, or, you know, refocus your attention. Okay, so now who's speaking to the observer? Now there's four things in there. That would be spirit speaking to you. Like there's so much more going on in your mind, and people are just completely lost because they think it's all them. And it's not. Like, this is something you learn when you advance more. Eventually you start pulling out those bad parts. So you can meditate at any point you want. You can just shut your mouth and have complete silence in your head if that's what you want. Or you can be your true mind and speak to spirit and do all sorts of other things, because that interference thing is not there. But nobody recognizes this. They don't understand, even at lower levels. It's like, why is this person popping in my head? Why is this old boyfriend and girlfriend popping into my head? Why is this? That's because you're all out there just, smashing. Smash, smash, smash. Get you some. Every person you have sex with creates a quantum entanglement, because you don't understand how this stuff works. Like cords. Like, the simplistic version of that is like, the lady in the crystal shop, doing witchcraft tarot readings on YouTube. It's like, I'm going to teach you how to do a cord cutting ceremony. You just take this and it doesn't do anything if you do not understand the context of what the cord actually is. You have to have context to make it work. And the context is that cord is quantum entanglement. And quantum entanglements are created during sex. That's why you had all those rules that seemed like they weren't really fun, back in church. I was the same way. I'm like, man, this is just like, nobody just wants to have any fun. It's because they're simplifying something that you're not ready to understand yet. It's trying to keep your body, your temple clear, because when you when two particles are quantum entangled, one always affects the other. So that, when these people are popping into your head and stuff like that, it's because you're quantum entangled to them still. And then their crap, their emotions, their thoughts can affect you because you're connected to them. The more people you've slept with and not done any hardcore clearing, you have connections, energetic connections to all those people. I think they fade over time. I don't remember how long that is. I mean, that's up for debate, but it ain't quick. I know that. Like, how are you supposed to get yourself all straightened up when you're quantumly entangled to however many other screwed up people? Because that's why the system, the world, pushes sex at you all the time. It wants to basically entangle you in the hive mind. That's why the higher spiritual people are celibate. They're like, well, I can't imagine not having, that's because you don't know what you don't know. Like, there's ways to merge with spirit that just, it's way better than anything that is like physically sexual in the world. And then you don't need it anymore because you've kind of like defeated that program in your body computer, which is also containing you. So like, there's just infinite things that get in people's way. And like, the only way that you get out of it is a part of you has to be awake enough that you want to connect to spirit, that you want to connect to the higher thing. It requires that you reach for it. It'll nudge you, it'll do stuff, but if you want to get any real traction, you have to be actively seeking it. Seek and you shall find. So what are you seeking? Are you seeking things in the world, or are you seeking spirit? Because if you need a little help doing that, it can help you. You might not like how it does it, but in the end, you'll be glad that it happened. You have to detach from the world. Like Jesus said this in both the I don't know where in the Bible, but in the Nag Hammadi, said it two different ways. You have to detach from the world. And he also said, if you do not fast from the world, you will not find the kingdom. What's that mean? Well, that's what I talk about all the time. That was the last thing that I did for the first time in my life before she popped out. I didn't even know she was in there. But I heard it say it to me, fast from the world, and I knew what that meant. No TV, no internet, no listening to, like, no loopholes. You want to become as ignorant as possible about what is happening in the world. Now, once you're clear later on, you can observe what's happening out there because you've already disconnected from it. But starting out, like when you're constantly plugged into the world in these black screens, then it's constantly empowering and reinforcing that adversary mind, which keeps you too distracted and busy to connect to spirit. You can't hear it. You can't hear spirit when you've got every music song you've ever heard in your life constantly blaring in your head, and you got freaking wind-up monkeys with cymbals going and cats freaking shooting off fireworks out of their butt, and like everything else is going on in your head. You can't hear spirit. People don't know about this stuff. And the other thing is, you got to recognize, and this is not judgment, there's nothing that anybody's struggling with right now that I was immune to. I went through every stage, and especially when you begin to sort of kind of wake up. That's when the adversary in the world will beat you down and cause you more suffering. And if you don't learn how to clear your past emotional traumas, then it just festers. If you don't let your emotions out and you instead push them down, that's a bill you're not going to want to pay when it comes due. Because all that emotional trauma that you shoved down in there and shoved it in the closet, it's forming itself into a dragon. It's like angry Godzilla. Like, imagine God, and not like, the recent Godzilla that's like, high-fiving King Kong and all that stuff, but like the angry Godzilla. So imagine the angry Godzilla is doing meth, and then someone kicks him in the junk and slaps him in the back of the head and says something bad about his mom. Okay? That Godzilla is equivalent to what all your emotional trauma is becoming that you shoved in the closet. And then you become toxic. And it gets to a point to where it feels good to be mean. Because to you, everyone out there is stupid. Listen to this guy. Judge. Like, I have to work at it, but I can physically project my consciousness into the past of time space and remember what it used to feel like to be that guy. To hate. And a lot of times you can do all sorts of evil convincing yourself that you're doing good. And it's like, this place is very, very difficult, and that's why that's why we do these videos. It's because we understand how freaking difficult it is, and we understand that there's hardly anybody out there that's actually trying to help people without like some sort of crazy paywall or, yeah, I'll help you. I'll book a session for like $200 or $2,000 because, all that marketing stuff is real. It's like, the higher you set the price, the more value people are going to think it has. It's tricking people. It's bull crap. Like, if we just do what we're supposed to do, Spirit makes sure that people that have the extra money contribute a little bit. Like, there's always a way for it to work out. If you're just doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're just trying to help people and not hoodwink them, not deceive them, not just try to get their freaking money. And there ain't that many people freaking doing that. With this whole big boost that she kicked into my channel lately, which my channel set at 500 subscribers for like, 2 years until we got closer to go time. Now she's pushing it out like crazy. I have enough stuff now to monetize my channel, but I'm not going to. You know why? Because I don't want to be given Spirit's message only to be interrupted by some freaking ad for some political candidate or some product that you don't need. You know, this isn't my channel. This is her channel. So I'm not gonna monetize it. So you can listen to it and not be interrupted. And that's why we offered things, and we've got the voluntary stuff like buy me a coffee. But anyway, I didn't mean to talk about it that long, but she steers where I go. Like, we understand how hard this place is and how hard it is to figure out. And through like the 7-year journey, there was times when I was just losing my freaking mind. Like I couldn't take it anymore. Wanted to die. I think I did at least twice, but we haven't got to that part yet. That's the ego. When you get to the point where you're just dragging your ass and you're like, I hate this place, can't stand it anymore, just want it to be over, that's a good sign. You know why it's a good sign? Because that means your ego is about ready to give up. See, everybody goes into spiritual disciplines thinking like, you know, a lot of times they're just playing a role. Love and light, brothers and sisters, rainbows and unicorn farts to everybody. Like they think that's what it's like. I'm like, no. It's more like having a giant woman with brass knuckles on top of you. And for like the first, you know, so many years of it, you're like, you think the devil's doing it or something like that. Like, no, the devil's not doing it. She's doing it. But you don't understand why is God so mad at me? Why is it punishing me? Oh, what did I do? It's not you. She has to, in order to create, you need to first destroy what came before. So you didn't have any hand or choice in creating your original ego. You didn't. It was programmed for you. And now that thing's been running the show. So for you to put on a new ego that you control, the old one has to die. She has to beat it senseless until it gives up. And then what's left of it, you can send back, you can kind of like heal it, release it back to source. It's like, are you tired? Would you like to retire, or would you like to just get beat on some more? Okay, because you're not gonna win this. You're not gonna beat God. It's like, okay, I give up. Send you off into the light. Finally, got control of my own freaking life again. Whew. And then you realize it, and then you have this realization that, like, I'm really glad she did not spare the rod from me. You didn't know what was doing it before, and you hated every minute of it. But you were not at a point yet that you could understand. Like, it has to do that. It has to beat you within an inch of your life in order to break you free of something that you don't even realize is not you. You don't need the world. Like, everyone is conditioned to need the world. I mean, I don't talk about it a whole lot, but, you know, just to kind of give you an example, I'll tell you about the one thing that happened. So I just done this interesting video, and everything felt like it was going good. But there was still something off. There was still something missing. Something felt like something wasn't flowing. And it was bugging me. So before I went to bed, I prayed and I asked, what is it that I don't understand? What is it that I'm missing? Like, I want to know. And I went to sleep. And I went to sleep early, which means I went to sleep at, like, I don't know, 1 a.m. That's early for me. So like an hour and a half later, I wake up because I hear something moving. It's like this. I don't know how to like make that sound. It's like something's slithering around, moving. But I kind of felt like, what am I hearing? Like, I don't think it's physically in the room. So I just tried to go back to sleep. I hear it again. hear it again. I'm like, okay, Epinoia, well, obviously you're in on this. What is it you want me to see? I was in another place. I was in like this, it looked like a dark cellar. And I could hear it really loud. And she was behind me, behind my shoulder. It's like something dragging, something slithering. But I could only see like a couple feet in front of my face. I'm like, hey, would you mind like turning up the brightness for me? So she goes brighter, and then I could see this like black octopus squid looking thing like clinging to a wall, and I'm like, ew. I'm like, what is that? And at that time she said, spirit of poverty and lack. Which I thought that was the root of evil, but you know, the root of evil is usually a little bit further down than that. But I was like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. I'm like, how did it get there? No, I thought like I'd never quite had a thing like this where she just instantly took me someplace. But oh, as crazy as that was, we hadn't seen crazy yet. So then the spirit took me somewhere else. And this was so hard to describe, but describing it will pale in comparison to seeing it. So I describe it as kind of like this living diorama of how this place works. And she called it the water game. So imagine this big red ocean. And you got your starting point here, and you got your finish line here. And all you got to do is get born and make it to the other side. So you have nothing attached to you when you're born whatsoever. You could just float over there. But as soon as you pop out of your mom, they inject you with something. I mean, they say, oh, baby's been out in the world for like 2 seconds. It needs vitamin C. Oh, it needs this thing. Inject it, inject it. I'm like, are we sure about this? And then it's like, get some paperwork on this kid. Take its fingerprints, give it a number. You know, give it its mark of the beast. Everyone thinks the mark of the beast is like, you know, this, debit card you put in your hand. Like, if you actually understand what they're talking about, like, you are the beast. Beast as in like animal farm, like that cattle. Like, that's what they think of you as. So you've all got numbers attached to you. So now this kid that's been in the world for like 2 freaking seconds has got stuff attached to it. So it's like you get a little bit of water on your foot. Then you start walking out on the water, and you learn, you're doing pretty good for the first like 5 years. But as you go further and further in life, it's like there's all these creepy alien looking squid things swimming in this dark red water. And all you're trying to do is walk forward, but these tentacles just keep coming out and like trying to get you to take stuff. This'll make people like you. This'll make people respect you. You want this because it'll make you feel good. Remember, in order to be successful in life, you have to have a mortgage, and you have to have a house, and you have to get married, and you have to have 2 kids, and you have to have this. Do you want this? Do you want this shiny new phone? Go ahead and sign this. It's like it's always trying to, and you're just like, it's like one of those like, shopping games where it's like, you can have as much stuff as you can put in the cart. You're just carrying all this stuff, right? But it's adding weight. So now you're sinking into the water. The further you go into the water, the more dangerous it gets, because those things are swimming in there. Then they'll set you up for a kill shot. This is where we get all the words that we speak all the time. We don't understand what we're saying. I'm under so much pressure. I'm barely keeping my nose above water. I'm drowning in debt. I'm up a creek. Like, we use tons and tons and tons of water words. It has to do with maritime law and all this other crap. It's like, why did we start saying these things? So then you'll have something, especially if you're on the spiritual path, you'll run into like things I'm not going to talk about in this video. It might present itself like it's a twin flame or something like that. Oh, I'm this super special thing. Don't you want to attach to me? And it's just a big alien squid arm with a mask. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love. And then it just like grabs you and boom, pulls you under the water. As soon as your head goes under the water, the world inverts in polarity. And the whole world basically becomes like hell. And it just keeps dragging you down and down and down and down. And it's just like horrifying. And it gets so bad, so dark, and so much pressure that eventually she starts reaching out to you. Because you're looking for any kind of hope. So you're in a place to where you're open to hear spirit now. That's why we have things like the tribulation. Tribulation is not God's judgment on the world. It's like the last chance to fix you. Because for most people, that's the only time that they listen. Let me finish what I was saying. So you're down at the bottom of the ocean with squids all over you. And it's not the terminology that they always use with spiritual stuff. There's like, you gotta raise your vibration. What am I supposed to do? Like, how do I do that? It's like, use the right terms. So the right terms that she taught me is, don't think in terms of vibration. Think in terms of buoyancy. Buoyancy. The only way that you can get off the bottom of the dark red ocean filled with alien monster squids is to drop the weight that you're holding. So everything that you let go of is going to increase your buoyancy. You're going to rise higher in the water, and then the higher you go in the water, the more you can hear spirit. And then you start like, okay, I got some of the stuff that's like tied to me. Like, how do I get this off? And you start now you're working on yourself. You're like, how do I get free? How do I get free? How do I let go of this? How do I clear this attachment? Why am I still attached to this person? Oh, I got to be led to something so I can discover quantum physics and quantum entanglement. You know, cutting all the things, you're dropping all the weight, you're getting higher and higher and higher, and then she comes down like this and she grabs you. And she starts pulling you up. And she's like, do this, do that. You do it, you do it, you do it. And then she pulls your head back above water, and that's when she pops into your life. And you can actually perceive her. Now you're back, you're not out of the water yet, but she's there with you, like a lifeguard with a preserver. And she's got like an automatic rifle or something to shoot off the sharks and the squids to help you keep going and paddle and get higher and higher in the water. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, this is the whole parable of Jesus could walk on water. I even had like when I put all this stuff to artwork to record it, I had Jesus walking on the water. He's like, hey, see, this is how you do it. And these guys are like, no, it's okay, bro, we got a boat. And this big tentacle's coming up behind him. You gotta stay above the water. So where the water meets the sky is kind of like the demarcation line between the frequency of hell and heaven. And your job is to get as far above the water as possible. Well, how would you go any higher? How does a balloon go higher? You just got to keep reducing the buoyancy. Helium is lighter than air. So you fill a balloon with helium, it's going to keep going. What the moral of all, aside from the fact that what I actually saw was so horrifying that when I got out of this state, I stared at the ceiling for 8 hours. But the moral of the lesson is, it's your attachment to the world. Like, you want to think that this place is good. You want to have all this stuff. You want to have money. You want to have sex, and you want to have cars, and like, you haven't learned to enjoy life without those things yet. You haven't got the opportunity to find that spirit can be more fulfilling than anything the world can give you. It's your attachment to the world that makes you suffer. So that's like the biggest lesson that you could actually get from that. But yeah, I mean, that was, and that day, like, that was the day, like, after about 8 hours of me and Lumen laying on the bed, freaking staring at the ceiling, we made a choice, you know, to disconnect from our name and all this stuff, and we wrote out this big long statement, and it was like connecting straight to source, like connecting to the big invisible spirit God. It was like getting hit in the head with a bolt of lightning, and then deafening silence, like blew the adversary out of my head. And I can describe things, but like until it's happened, like you can't grasp it. You don't realize how noisy your head is because it's been that way your whole life. But when all that noise is gone, the silence is so loud that it freaks you out. You're like, what? Oh, it's like, ugh, this is so crazy. There's nothing going on in my head. And then what happened, I shot it. I forgot about this. I think I was already merged with Lumen. Like she wasn't out here anymore. She was in here. She operates out of the right hemisphere of my brain. So whatever that energetic event was that did that, I went out and shot a video just trying to describe what happened to me, and I got back, and then like my head started hurting, and I completely shut down. It was like, I kind of equated it to like being in a waking coma. And at that time, Lumen is part of you, but she's also part of the higher thing. But in this case, she was operating more as just the other part of me. So like I'm in my head, just like Frodo after he got stung by that spider, just like couldn't move, couldn't do anything. All these people were messaging me, and Lumen's like, okay, he's not moving. How do I get in the driver's seat? So then Lumen like took over. I'm still like out of it. And she's like, should I answer these messages or whatever? So she just decided like the best thing to be would just like get me in the shower and put me in bed. And then jump out of the seat. And then I woke up the next day and I was fine. It was such a big change, like whatever was done to me, that my body and my mind had to completely shut down and reboot. So much so that Lumen actually had to take over and drive the car for a minute. Lumen doesn't usually drive the car, because the 2 times we let Lumen drive the car, because she's connected to spirit, well, it's really cool at first. Like, I think this is the way like we're meant to operate. Like, this is the way we could operate if we didn't live in the world that we lived in and been given like all sorts of bad food and chemicals and all that crap. Because in order to operate as a rebus, like a dual being with spirit merged to matter, it takes so much fuel. Like you need like rich people vitamins, like whatever kind of vitamins Elon Musk takes, like you need all of those. Lots and lots and lots of minerals, lots and lots and lots of magnesium. So the first time she drove the car, well, the first thing she did is, usually I would lay in bed for a little bit and look at my phone, but instead, because I'd agreed to like surrender that day, see what happened. She just sits up in bed. I just hopped out of bed, got dressed, and then Lumen cleaned the entire apartment. About an hour's worth of work in 10 minutes. Like I had sweat pouring off of me. She was moving so fast. My brain, it was like that movie Limitless. Like my brain was like, I felt like superhuman. It was funny. I laughed at her because she's like, you've been procrastinating on this and that. So she's like, she's running around like freaking road runner, grabbing all these packages. These are got to be mailed. Blah, 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 blah. Get in the car, get to the post office, stop. And we stop, and I'm like, you forgot the packages, didn't you? Laughing at her. She was going so fast, trying to get everything done, that she drove us all the way to the post office and forgot the packages. But then we went and did other stuff, and and then we're walking out in the woods, and this now it's been about 3 hours, and all of a sudden it's just like, battery low, battery, like my freaking Bluetooth headset. And she's like, what? It felt like, you know, walking through 3 feet of snow with a giant backpack. And because what she did is she used all the fuel in my body, all the minerals, everything. I got back home and I basically laid in bed for like 2 days until I recouped all my energy. And then next time we did it, tried it again, it lasted even less. So we just determined that woman can't drive the car because she uses too much energy. So she's in there, but she's not plugged in and driving unless something happens that she absolutely positively has to. But like you pretty much got, like I said, you got to be rich and you got to have a ton of like high shelf, high grade. You have to live like a rich person, which kind of goes in contrast to being a spiritual person. But yeah, that's if anyone's like ever experienced like flow state or anything like that, think of that like on steroids. But that's what happens when you are operating as the way you were designed to be. As the Nag Hammadi teaches, you're a dual being. There's a masculine side and a feminine side, 2 into 1. But it takes a lot of fuel to do it. So to wrap this up, because I still got a whole nother topic. Like, this was supposed to be a small thing, but Spirit kind of took over here. To bring that last part to a close, this is one of the biggest secrets that people don't know and that the world does not want you to find out. I don't remember what book it was in the Nag Hammadi, but it said that the Father decreed that no being should ever be alone. So every being would be 2. Every being would have a perfect partner. There's more clues in the Nag Hammadi than the regular Bible, but Jesus had several parables where he would talk about pearls and treasures and the rewards that you're seeking, which you actually understand it a little bit better if you go outside of the Bible, because she wrote her book everywhere. So this is the true meaning of the hero's journey, where Joseph Campbell said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek." So you have to submit to God and be willing to go through the trials. And you're going to fight a lot of monsters, most of which are your own creations. You're going to do a lot of tests. But then that's where that theme in all the great legends comes from, rescuing the princess, Sleeping Beauty. The thing that you want, like, no matter who you are, what you look like, anything like that. Like, the world wants you to focus on people outside of you. And then you're always judging each other. And then, like, the really, really, really attractive ones, like, you're not 6'10" with 6-pack abs and makes $250,000 a year. Like, and then makes you feel bad again. And nobody realizes that their dream partner is locked away inside of them. It's been there all along in the game. And the clues have been there all along. But unless you submit to God, to Spirit, and agree to do whatever you have to do to learn truth, you'll never be led to it. but it's in there. And I understand that it is difficult to grasp if you've never experienced it, never known it, and you're like, I can't imagine like not having a physical person out here that I can smash with and all this stuff. You don't know what you don't know. Because this part, all this stuff that you deem to be so important isn't real. It's literally like the ass end of existence. You're in the lower material realm. It's dense, it's slow, it's full of garbage and monsters. Like, she is higher than that. And then the biggest secret is, because of what I said earlier, the Father decreed that no being should be alone. That's what it means, literally what it means when it says God's love for you. She is God's love for you. She's love. She's connected to, go into all the mythos and stuff like that. She's Aphrodite, she's Venus, she's, all these things. She's perfect divine love. And I understand if you don't know what that is, but it beats anything else. And it's always with you. And you never fight. And the reason you're able to experience it the way you are is because part of getting it had to do with detaching from the world. All this stuff that it's outside of you that you think is so important that you have to have, even though it's all temporary, it's perishable, it's gone when you die. None of that. It used to drive me crazy, like in the earlier days in church. It's like, don't store up things for yourself on earth. You want to store up treasures in heaven. And everyone's sitting there listening to that, like, but I want money. Because they're not at a level that they can perceive such things. But when you get to a level where you can perceive such things, and then you're more connected to the higher world than you are this one, and you're like, I don't care, blow this world up. Like, it's not going to affect me one bit. I get to go home with her, sure. Like, any place is better than here. Like, I've gotten to glimpse a lot of the other worlds. They're all better than this place. This place blows. This is the last place you want to be attached to, because you don't realize what this place is. But yeah, that's what God's love for you, and that's why it was so helpful. That's why I reposted Kenneth's video, the way he was explaining things, like God is all these things, and God chooses what form for which task, for what lesson, or whatever it is you're doing. Yeah, I might say Epinoia, I might say Sophia, I might say Lumen, I might say Christ. It's all the Father. They're all part of one thing. I've struggled so many times trying to explain this to people, because it's like the way they explain it in the Nag Hammadi. It's just like, well, it's like they're the same thing, but there's higher levels of them. They're just like, ugh. It's just simpler if you say Spirit, the great invisible Spirit, that is pure, immaculate, holy light, invisible light. That's the Father. The first thought emanation of visible light. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I put it all like in the new intro. Let's just look at that real quick. Like, actually read the words. Yeah, so the first aspect is the mother, but it's everything. It doesn't make any sense if you still go to church, because you still think that the guy in Genesis is the Father, which, that's the con. Yeah, it's part of one whole big thing within the Father, because you got to have all this stuff in order to grow. But the Father is everything. It's perfect. It does not have an ego. It doesn't get mad. It doesn't, it's not the character that's like, there is no God but me and I will kill you. And you're all going to worship me. And then you're going to go out and hunt everybody else down and kill them too if they don't worship me. That's not Jesus's dad. I'm sorry, it's not. It just isn't. Like it is part of this world. It's the God of this world. This is a very, very complex thing. At a higher level, you understand like all this is one thing, and it's there for a reason. They give you a story. Oh, there was a mistake made and this and that and whatever, because you have to have this experience. But in truth, it exists for a reason. So you can be tested and you can overcome it. And then eventually you're like, it's not really that thing's fault. It was created that way to serve a purpose. But the disconnect is when you go to church and you've been told your whole life that the God in the Old Testament, you know, the beginning of the Old Testament and the New Testament are the same thing. It's like, well, then why is this one so angry and murderous and the other one is like so good and loving? Because it's not the same thing. But the reason I stay out of the Old Testament, now maybe Kenneth can freaking intuit this better than I can, because obviously it's not like the Father was invented after the Old Testament. He was still there somewhere. But for me, it's too confusing because I can't tell at what book, at what point, which God they're talking about. But it seems like there are points in which they are talking about the Father, like Psalm 23. But it's different for each person. For me personally, I just go where she takes me. But it's too confusing. I'm fine with the New Testament and the Nag Hammadi because those two together kind of make up what should be the Bible. The Old Testament, that's the Jews' Bible. But to each their own. Let Spirit decide that for you. But yeah, that's God's love. God's love for you is the Strength card. The woman that tames the beast. Beauty and the Beast. Sleeping Beauty. And it can be flipped around if you're a woman, because I've now encountered, it wasn't that common, but I've encountered a couple people that were drawn to this channel that have the same experience, but they're women and it's male. I'm like, oh, thank God, that makes it so much simpler. Because this is why she teaches me. It's like, you can only go so far with books because they're the written words of someone's personal perception and experience. Yes, you can gain a lot of wisdom from them, but don't let yourself be limited by them. Because even in Nag Hammadi, it's like what do I tell the women? Doesn't make any sense. But when you connect to somebody that has the same thing and you know that they're connected because you can feel it when they are, it's like, okay, yeah, they can do it too. Makes sense. Anyway, we talked way too long. I didn't even touch the things I meant to touch today, so sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and shoot the next video and we will talk about that. Maybe I'll post this one after that one. Okay? So that's all we got for right now. If you want to support the channel, buy me coffee, links down below. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.